My mom was always trying to teach me lessons, and one of the things that she always taught me is the importance of other people. Not only are other people important because it's an opportunity for you to help someone else, but also because of the financial situations we're in, it was one of those things where it's an opportunity to let other people help you. I think this is something I personally struggle with, is I love helping other people, but I hate when I need help, you know?
Yeah.
And if everyone was like that, no one would ever be able to help other people.
Welcome to another episode of Relentlessly Resilient, where real people share real-life experiences and the tools they've developed to move forward and live their best lives. I'm Jennie Taylor.
And I'm Michelle Scharf. Jennie, today we have with us in studio, I'm so excited that we get to be in studio now. We've had a few of these. Isn't that great?
It is so great. It's a beautiful studio
So
for those
nice.
not here with us.
Yes, a brand new studio at KSL. We have with us George Ferris, and I met George on the Mia Love campaign. Gosh, that was 11 years ago, maybe now, or maybe not that far.
I think it was 9 to 10, but it's been a little bit.
It's been a minute, so I think it was 2014.
For our listeners who might not be
9
super
years.
into politics, walk us through who is Mia Love, where.
Yeah, so it was the winning campaign for Mia Love's congressional race.
Okay. In
Yeah.
the state of Utah,
In
that
the state
covers
of
which part of the
Utah.
state?
It was the second district?
The fourth congressional district.
Because we had split it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
It
right.
just changed to the fourth.
It had just
Okay.
changed to the fourth. I'm glad he remembers because
Yeah. Good job, George.
it seems like another life. There's like before John's cancer and after
Yeah.
John's cancer, and everything before is just a little bit like fragmented now.
So you two both worked on that campaign, which, as you mentioned, was a successful campaign.
Yeah,
And
it
Mia
was
Love was elected
successful.
to Congress. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually left towards the end of that campaign. Jim Matheson had retired, and I had an opportunity to run for county commissioner. So I didn't get to be on the very final end of that campaign, but I was there for the convention and her winning that. So it was really exciting. Anyway, I met George, met him, and immediately saw this man has a heart of gold. Like, I just felt a connection to him immediately. It was interesting because he reached out to me and said, I have a story to share. And I wanted to tell him, I'm like, look, I just wanted you to know I've always had a soft spot for you. Because I had left that campaign early, we didn't really develop a real connected relationship. And so it was really fun to reconnect.
Years later, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
And be able to learn so much more about him. I'd followed him on social media. And so I was watching things happen, but I didn't have the full picture. And we're going to talk about that full picture today. This is going to be a part of a 2-part series. So part 1, we're going to talk about George's upbringing, his mom, and her challenges. And then in part 2, we're going to talk about George and what's going on in his life and what resilience means to him and what he's learned both from his mom and from his life experiences. So George, welcome to our show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. And it's a real honor to be on this podcast. I've listened to a few episodes. And, when I went to you to bring up the story, I'm going to be honest, I was a little scared too, because it's one of those things that it's something that I don't like facing, but it's one of those things you kind of have to, with how big a lot of the stuff has been in my life. So I'm really excited to share it with you.
Well, thanks
guys,
for
so.
being willing to bring that here and share it with us. I'm sure it'll help a lot of people listening who might have their own story they're struggling with that they don't want to, but they have to. So let's dive in.
Absolutely. So George, tell us a little bit about your mom.
Yeah, so my mom, her name was Esther Owens. She got married and became Esther Ferris. She was born in the South. She was born in Georgia and grew up there for quite a while. Got married to a guy who wasn't my dad, but they were a military couple, so they went around the country a bit. She ended up in California where they split up, and that's where she met my dad. My mom was an incredibly resilient person. She's someone who I have always looked up to and still do to this day, and is probably, how when someone passes, a lot of times you kind of think of either the good or the bad about them, and there's not really that. I have always had like this view of my mom as just the greatest person. And so when she passed, it just kind of got even more of a, I don't know, like a superhero kind of figure for me. But she was great. But she had a lot of struggles in life. So my mom married my dad in like the late 80s. And actually, it's interesting. When they got married, the guy who married him didn't know him. And he said, hey, if I knew that you guys were a mixed race couple, I wouldn't actually marry you, which is kind of a
interesting.
yeah, it's
In California?
in California in
the late 80s.
late 80s. You know,
So they had just hired somebody to perform the ceremony who
Yeah.
hadn't seen them before the ceremony.
yeah, and so
Wow.
it's not the best way to not the best thing to be told on your wedding day.
Sure.
So, but they were married for 14 years. 3 kids came out of it, and but through some tragedy and some tough situations and some bad decisions on my parents' end, they got divorced. My dad had a trucking company that he was running across country and was making really good money. Had a bunch of businesses he was delivering for, and one of his trucks ended up getting stolen, and the insurance didn't cover it, and it ended up leading to us, losing our home and my parents getting divorced, and it was a lot more factors into it, but just kind of for the sake of time, like it wasn't the best marriage, and but it lasted for 14 years and then dissolved. I was about 9, 10 at the time. So at that point, my mom's really going through one of the lower points of her life from that point, and she's always been a really firm Christian, right? And she went to the church, and the pastor of the church said, "Hey, I want to speak into your life about restoration, okay? And I know you've lost a lot, but it's going to be restored." And that the message was good, but also it was not good, in quite a few ways. So after that, we couldn't stay where we were. So we were living in the Bay Area, which is everyone knows is crazy expensive. Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Yeah, single mom, no way.
Yeah, single mom, 3 kids. And so we moved to Modesto, which is about an hour and a half east of the Bay Area. And that's where I kind of spent my teenage years. And while we were there, my mom decided she wasn't going to rely on anyone else. And so she started going to college. She had never had a college degree. She got a bachelor's degree. And then it was about the time I was graduating. A year before I graduated high school, she started her master's degree. And she goes through and gets her master's degree, right?
Good for her.
Yes. And while this is going on, we're having just an incredibly tough time with housing, super inconsistent housing. We end up moving from the first house we lived in Modesto to a lady's garage. And while we're living in her garage, like some trouble happens there where the lady's son points a gun at my sister. And it was I just don't know how I don't know how my mom survived all this, just because you're living in someone's garage, their kid points a gun at your daughter, and this is like your home where you're living. So we had to get out of there. We ended up going to a different place. It's this duplex, right? And you can kind of tell that this duplex it was in a rough part of town. And while we're at this duplex, it's 2 bed, 1 bath. So me and my brother stay in one room, my mom and my sister stay in another room. And you can kind of tell we were the best tenants that person has had in a long time, right? Because we had been there for about a year and a half, and you can see where the paint was just falling off the walls, where the landlord was just repainting over mold.
Ugh.
That wasn't. So we were there for quite a while. We ended up finding out that the one half of the duplex where we were living, the other half was a meth lab.
Ugh.
And so, and all this time, my mom is raising 3 kids, and we're all 5 years apart. So it's not like she could drop one of us off at
Sure.
school, or all 3 of us off.
Different schools, different stages of life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she's working on a master's degree, right?
Mm-hmm.
So while she's working on her master's degree, she gets a job actually at the housing authority. Okay, it was an internship, and she was the only person working at the housing authority that was also using the services of the housing authority. And so my mom, she never gave up. She always was working hard and kind of getting to the point where she knew what her next step was going to be. And that was something that she really taught us, was like, you want to know what your next step's going to be. So she actually graduates, right, with her master's degree. But you know how in college a lot of times they'll give you your degree if you're one class away. And so she had one class she had to finish up. So she walks the stage and we all get family photos, and just I'm in junior college at the time, and incredibly proud of her. And before she can finish that last class, she gets told, hey, your kidneys are failing. And it was just one of the toughest things that I've ever seen my mom go through. And she starts going to dialysis. I remember being in the hospital with her kidneys failing. And she's like, look, I don't want to go through dialysis. I don't want to go through this health stuff. I'm not going through it. Either God's going to heal me or I'm going to die. Like, those are my two options. And we had to, like, talk her out of that. And it was just, to this day, that moment stands out as something where I am faced with the reality that my mom's not going to always be there. So she eventually does do dialysis, right? And seeing her in this moment of life really, it created a bar for me where, for what I think the best humans can be, right? I think in this darkness, I saw so much beauty in what my mom was doing. So she gets dialysis, okay? She starts going there, and after 2 weeks, she goes to us and she says, this is the most depressing thing I've ever seen, is going into dialysis, seeing everyone who's kind of like given up. Dialysis became like a death sentence. And she says, I can't be in this environment. So what she does is she gets some people together. She starts raising some money, and she starts making a support group for the people who are there, and starts connecting in with them. And she really wants to, she calls it Kidney Interactive Support Services, right? Which is acronyms KISS. And the logo was like a kidney bean that kind of was shaped between halfway a kidney bean and lips. And so my mom always loved like that type of stuff. And so while she's doing this, people are really enjoying it. I remember we came home for Christmas. I was in college. We came home for Christmas, and my mom had saved up a bunch of money. She really wanted to have a good Christmas, right? And she bought us all a bunch of gifts. And the night before Christmas, she hid them in the trunk of our car. And she goes there the next morning, and someone had broken into all of our car and stolen every gift from us, right?
Oh, my gosh.
And so my mom, in this moment, after, all the stuff she's gone through, all that time, she sits us down as a family to tell us what's going on. And you know what she says? She says, we need to stop and we need to pray for whoever stole those gifts. Because whoever stole those gifts, they need Jesus more than we needed those gifts. They need life-changing, like something that changes their life more than we needed those gifts. And like, I she was, I don't know how she could have such a positive attitude. I would have been ready. I was ready to start knocking on doors to, like, Christmas morning, let's start throwing down and find out who took these things,
Good stuff.
And that wasn't how my mom was. My mom was like, she didn't have much, but what she had, she was willing to give. Always.
That's beautiful.
I love
always.
that. And I also love that her perspective was always higher than the challenge.
Yeah.
That she could step back and see the bigger picture. And that's a rare quality in people. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. We're back. So tell us about, you're just telling us about your mom's incredible spirit and her sense of being able to have a positive outlook regardless of how really crappy, I'll use that word, the situation would be. This is a woman that has been fighting for her life. Sounds like she still had that one class to finish up her schooling. When you get told your kidneys are failing, it's a big issue, and your ability to function in life is not really great when you don't have functioning kidneys. We've had some other people on with kidney issues, and it's something that we all take for granted. Our kidneys function, they work, they clean out our blood, and we function well. But when that's not functioning, it's a daily problem. So, tell us more about this situation. So it's Christmas morning. She's telling you guys to pray because this person needs Jesus more than you guys need your gifts.
Yeah, and I tell that story just as a example of the character that she had.
Yeah.
And how she really, I thought her story is really good for just the concept of resilience because in my life, there have been things that happened to me where I have not been as resilient as my mom, where I've wanted to just give in. And her example in that was something that has stuck with me and my siblings and just kind of stood out as how to address bad situations, because you really, you're going to have something bad happen.
Right. It's
no matter
life,
what,
right?
No matter who you are, exactly. Right. And the question is, in those situations, are you going to rise up to that, or are you going to let it beat you? And when I say rise up, I don't mean I'm a big sports guy, and a lot of times rise up kind of comes across as rising and overcoming and conquering, but I don't think that's really what it is. I think it's more of a keeping going, not stopping.
It's the continuation when you want to give up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So she was having kidney issues, and and during this time, I was old enough where I was able to have conversations with my mom that are kind of on a deeper level than my brother, who's 10 years younger than me. And she would tell me about this restoration. She's like, hey, I was promised restoration, and since then, we lost our home. I didn't get to finish my degree. We lived on social services for a long time, and she hated every day of it. And she wanted to, more than anything, to be able to provide for her own family without needing assistance. But that never took place. She was on social services. She was having to rely on other people to get her to and from dialysis, because I was living in Utah at the time. And my sister actually was also living in Utah at the time. So my brother, who was 12 years old, was the primary caregiver for my mom. And I struggled with that as well, just because there was quite a few times where when I was on the campaigns, working races, I was like, I need to go spend time with my mom. I need to quit this. I need to go move back to California and be with my mom. And she would tell me, no, you are living your dream. You've always wanted to be someone who's involved in politics, and you're doing that. I'm not letting my situation stop you. And I still wrestle to this day, of saying, I should have just said, no, I'm doing it. I'm going back. Because, when you lose a loved one, you always think of man, where could I have spent more time with them than that I didn't? But
I want to stop you right there because I want to share something.
Yeah.
When my husband died, my daughter had to go to an event for her work. And he was clearly in the last stages of life. And I said to her, you need to just go. You need to go and you need to do this event because your dad would want you to. And I knew that. John was such a worker, and work was important. And he saw much more value than just the paycheck. And so she went. And I know that she has at times struggled with that. But she said goodbye, and he wasn't conscious, and it was okay. And I'm going to tell you right now, as a mother, as a parent, it would have been really hard for her to see you come back to care for her when all she wants is to know that you're moving forward and living your best life. It matters. And that is such an important, I didn't mean to make you cry.
No, it's okay.
But I'm just going to tell you, as a mother, it would be hard for me to believe that my issues or my needs were so great that I was robbing my kids of their futures in any way.
And, my mom said quite a few things like that to me when I would bring up, moving back. And she was like, because I love my mom to death. And, I'd been married for 2 years at this point. And she was like, you're not uprooting you and your wife to come back and take care of me. And, I really wanted to. But.
And I'm sure she knew that. And she also needed you to be living your life for you and your family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, she needed that. That was probably more healing for her to know that you were making steps towards creating the life for you and your family.
I really appreciate you saying that, just because, whenever you lose a loved one, you remember the things that they say. But as I've gotten older and gotten further away from my mom's passing, some of those things that she told me, they just don't ring as loud as they do when she's telling it to me. And so I constantly am thinking of if I'd been able to do this when mom was alive, maybe I could have helped out or something and done something. And but I know that when she passed, she was extremely proud of me.
Mm-hmm.
She was proud of my siblings, and she was proud of everything that had been accomplished. But it's still, you miss them,
Yeah.
I think I was talking about the restoration.
Yeah.
Yes. Part of the reason why I've been hesitant to tell the story a bit too is because when thinking about it, it doesn't feel like there's restoration there, and you have to face the reality that is either A, this person of leadership of a spiritual leadership position lied to my mom and said hey, you're going to get restoration when that wasn't the truth, or, as a religious person, is God really doing that, right? And these are serious questions, and it's something that my family has struggled with for quite a while, to be honest. My mom, those are just some of the stories. When I go back to Modesto and I spend time with my friends and family still there, everyone brings up about how much they miss my mom and how great she is. At my mom's funeral, the pastor who did the service told the story. He was like, my mom made him promise he would never tell anyone this story. And he told it at her funeral. But my mom never made me promise I wouldn't tell anyone this story.
So you're going to share it with us.
So you have nothing to lose.
Our listeners get inside scoop.
Yeah, she never told me this. So I found out. So I don't know why she didn't. Well, I know why she didn't tell me this. But, my mom was always in a financial situation where our church really helped out so much. They were all if there's ends that weren't being met, they helped take care of that. It was a phenomenal church. It still exists. It's called the Neighborhood Church in Modesto, but they were going through a remodel, and they wanted people in the congregation who had extra funds to do something, and my mom really wanted to be a part of this, and so she saved up money because of how much the church has been there. She'd saved up quite enough money to pay for the chairs and the $1,000 towards the chairs, and the pastor refused it multiple times, and he said no. And my mom said, no, this congregation has given so much to me, I want to give back, and I'm not going to let you stop me from giving back. And he literally said no multiple times, and it was just the type of person my mom was. So she was going to give, and she was going to help out no matter what. So hopefully I don't get in too much trouble for sharing that story, right? But the whole thing about restoration is just looking at this, my mom eventually had a stroke from her complications from kidney failure, right? She couldn't take care of herself at this point, and we were trying to figure out who's going to help take care of her. We end up moving her back to Atlanta, and my aunt takes care of her, and she lives for almost another year. And like one of those things that like a lot of people rely on in these types of situations is faith, right? And so I remember one day I prayed. I was like, "Hey, like God, I want you to heal my mom," right? And I had kind of given up on her being healed, and the next morning she died. And it's stuff like that was really difficult to like, because I a lot of people have everyone has their own thing that they use to kind of get through stuff, and really faith was one of my big ones, and I just felt like I was being kind of played with. If there is a God, like this guy's playing with me, or he's not real, like one of the two. Neither one of those are great in my situation. And so, that situation was incredibly difficult, and it turned out to be like a big turning point in my life, because I don't think you can face those type of things without, I don't know, having to reevaluate literally everything.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and it sounds like your mother was a wonderful woman. I love that you said she was already a superhero in life, and she just became more superhero since her passing. We'd love to hear maybe what are some of the lessons that you learned from your mother?
My mom was always trying to teach me lessons, and one of the things that she always taught me is the importance of other people. Not only are other people important because, it's an opportunity for you to help someone else, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of how she lives her life, is each person that you encounter and meet, it's an opportunity to help someone else. But also, because of the financial situations we're in, it was one of those things where it's an opportunity to let other people help you. I think this is something I personally struggle with, is I love helping other people, but I hate when I need help,
Yeah.
And if everyone was like that, no one would ever be able to help other people. If everyone didn't let other people help them and was so closed on like, these are my problems, I'm dealing with them by myself, then we become such an isolated society at that point. So
it's the one thing Jennie's really good at it. I'm terrible at it.
I've gotten better at it, but I'm with you. It's not comfortable. When my husband died, I remember being drowned. I felt like I was drowning in other people's help, and I felt incapable. I felt completely worthless. I felt like everyone's doing everything for me because I can't. But then I discovered something really, really beautiful. And it was kind of the synergy that was created when I let them. I mean, I still feel like a total arrogant fool to say I let people help me. Like I was so nice to let them help me. But it takes a certain level of, I would let them see my messy house. I would let them cook when I couldn't feed my kids. And I began to realize it wasn't just, it's like you said, John knew hard work was more than a paycheck. Mm-hmm. I began to learn the help was more than just the casserole or the blanket or the thing, even the act of service. There was a beautiful undertone to receiving help, to where I kind of got to the point where I made a commitment that I would never say no. If somebody asked, can I help you? I would say yes. And I'd think of something, and sometimes it'd be awkward. I'd be like, I don't really need that, but I know you want to help so badly. And I learned so much about just the beauty of humanity through that. It was almost like a science experiment. I sometimes have to close my eyes and say, yes, you can help us. And my pride would be just right in my way. And then something beautiful would unfold. And I would be so glad that I kind of swallowed my pride for the moment. But it doesn't necessarily come easy. But I have gotten to the point now where I realize people want to help. It feels good to help. So I'm kind of a mooch now. I'll ask who wants to help with this, or there's a service opportunity. Who wants to get involved with that? Or who's who's willing and available. But
we had a
it is
mutual
hard.
friend
It is
recently
hard.
having a surgery, and I said, let other people help. You know, you've got a lot of people that love and support you, let them help. But I will say I struggle, George.
Yeah,
I
it's hard.
can relate to it. I struggle, and I struggle to even know what to tell people. If I need anything, I just don't even, because I have learned, and that's basically a trauma response, by the way. I have learned to depend on myself.
Mm-hmm.
I have learned how to figure things out. I've learned to just figure a different way to get things done if I can't physically do it myself. And so, you know, it is a good thing for our listeners to hear. Like, it's not easy for the person. Sometimes we think that somebody asking for our help, they're being lazy or
it's a weakness.
Or they're weak, or that it's an irresponsibility of their own duties or life. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes people really do need the help, and sometimes we really need to be able to step up and do that.
Well, and you're both really involved in politics, and in this country, we thrive on independence. Like, that's what America's all about, right? And self-reliance. And those are wonderful, beautiful things. We want to be self-reliant. We want our children to be self-reliant. But I think we run the risk of going a little too far and thinking that means I have to do it all by myself, for myself, and of my own accord, when in reality, Michelle, how many guests have we interviewed where they've said part of their resilience was someone else's help, someone else's support? The memory of your mother becomes a piece of the fabric of your resilience. And
I think part of my trauma around asking for help is I was actually really in need of help. I had just had my second child and was so sick, and I was having, but we didn't know at the time, but I was having those little stones, gallstones. From my liver.
Those little things are so awful.
I'm like, those little things, not the kidney, the liver. It was my gallstones, and I had like 11 episodes, and we were waking up my neighbors in the middle of the night to watch our kids so we could go to the hospital, and we didn't know what was going on. And then eventually I landed in the hospital for a week, and they ended up taking my gallbladder out. And the neighborhood church had to step in, and my newborn daughter was getting tossed around, and they had all decided that my breast milk was somehow poisoned and tainted, and so they decided to start feeding her formula, and all these things were going on, and none of it was in my control.
Making
I had to
decisions for you,
surrender to completely, and none of them understood me because I had my child at home. Well, this one I actually had in the hospital, but was very into natural birth and natural things. And anyway, I remember one of the ladies that had her last brought her to me the day I came home from the hospital, and I couldn't move because I just had surgery on my abdomen. I was laying on my back, and she placed the baby on my stomach and walked out the door and said, "It's time for you to start taking care of your responsibilities." And left. And that was such a painful experience for me. And I decided I would never ask for help again.
Yeah.
And my life has been an interesting combination of things.
Wow.
And I primarily haven't
terrible.
had to, but it's been interesting because I really do see the value in being able to. And I've now been able to recognize that it's actually been a trauma response in me in saying, well, I don't want to be anyone's burden. And I think that that's where it comes from, right? A lot of people feel like, I don't want to burden somebody with my problems, right?
Absolutely. And you're 100% right. And I still work on this as well to this day, where I've gotten to the point where I'll let people help me. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times I'll track it, and I'm like, you help me, I'm absolutely going to help you back, and you're going to take it. I'm going to get even by helping you back. And then,
And don't you dare say no.
That's hard too, because then it gets very transactional and it doesn't feel like service,
It's
right?
quid pro quo.
And so I have been, the other day, I just felt inspired to pay for somebody's food that was behind me. And it was a little bit more than I kind of figured that it might have been. And I thought, okay, well, I felt inspired.
I already said yes, yeah.
I felt inspired to do this, so I don't know what's going on, and I'm just gonna whatever. And so I feel like, there's a lot of different ways that we can serve one another, and sometimes we might not even understand why the urge to help or do something kind for somebody else matters, and we may never know, and that's okay. So I understand kind of that idea of like, well, so-and-so really did this for me. If I can ever help them back, I want to be able to step up and do that. That's okay. But to be cautious that it doesn't get very transactional.
Yeah, and I think both are, if it becomes too transactional or not allowing people to help at all, are dangerous places to be. 'Cause
it's toxic. It's trauma.
Exactly. And you really get help from that community of people around you, your friends and your family. And when you start making that relationships with other people when you're in a tough spot, either one way where you can't help me, but I can help you, or transactional, you risk really damaging those relationships
Absolutely.
that are when you need them most.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so that was something that my mom really taught me through both actions and words. Was just the importance of other people, the importance of that community, building community, and making sure that you guys are, you're relying on each other and you're able to be real with each other. That was another thing. If I can just add one other thing, is just how real and genuine my mom was in all of her relationships. She
authenticity is such a beautiful quality.
Absolutely, and it's vital because if you're not being authentic with yourself or with other people, what you're giving to them isn't authentic, and then what you're getting back from them isn't authentic. So when they need help, it could be something you're good at, but if they know a different aspect of you that's not real, if it's something you're good at, they might not realize that. Or if you need help and they know a non-authentic you, they might help in a way that's not helpful.
Right.
So true.
Absolutely. I love that. I love these concepts that we brought up under resiliency.
Yeah.
And addressing things like the trauma response of not being willing to help or being too transactional. And I love bringing up authenticity and why it really matters. It matters because people won't know how to show up for us and we won't know how to show up for others.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful lesson that everyone needs to hear today in the world that we're living in. I love it. Thank you for coming on our show.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing. And by the way, what is your mother's name?
Her name's Esther.
Esther?
Esther Ruth. Her maiden name was Owens, but her last name was Ferris. So
okay,
Esther
Ruth. Well, thank you for sharing so much about Esther Ruth and the lessons that she taught you, and the beautiful man that you've become because of her is really evident to me in my interactions with you. She definitely lives, I'm sure, within all of her kids, but I can definitely see from the stories that you've told me now a lot of the qualities that I saw and admire in you, I now can understand where they came from. So thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you for giving me the chance to share. I really appreciate it.
Hey, I'm really glad this is part 1 of 2, so we get to learn more. In our next episode, we're going to continue that conversation and learn not only what you learned from your mother, but maybe where you've gone in life since you lost her. So I'm really looking forward to that second part. To each of our listeners, we hope you've also enjoyed what you've heard today and that you'll tune in for part 2 next week. If you're listening and you have a story that you're willing to share, we would love to connect with you. You can email us at rrpodcast@ksl.com or find us on social media. Instagram is Relentlessly Resilient Podcast and Facebook is Relentlessly Resilient. It's a little button you can click to schedule a 15-minute phone call with Michelle to just talk through what you've been through, what you've learned, and if it might be a good fit for the show to share with our listeners.
And remember, whatever you do today, remember to be kind. You have no idea the struggles others are dealing with in their life. Have a great day.